Welcome to Up Close Far Out, a YouTube video presentation of broadcast industry trade publication Talkers Magazine. I'm your host, Michael Harrison. Our guest this installment has been recognized as one of the most important radio talk show hosts in America for the past third of a century, Dom Giordano. Dom, a political commentator, social generalist, and expert on education, is a former Pennsylvania-based schoolteacher whose keen insights and communication skills were discovered by talk radio in Philadelphia back in 1987 when he became a host on WWDB-FM. In 2000, he joined WPHT 1210 AM in Philly, where he's been broadcasting ever since. Currently heard each day between noon and 3 p.m., Dom Giordano is aptly described by industry observers as the dean of Philadelphia talk show hosts. In addition to his enduring radio presence, Dom hosts several podcasts, including the rapidly growing Old School, New School, Next School, which takes a critical but constructive view of America's education crisis and is must listening for parents who care about their kids and the future of our nation. Boy, are you the right guy for me to be talking to. I've been thinking about this is one of my pet topics for years, and that is the premise that you cannot have an effective democracy unless you have an educated public. Because and that's the whole reason the aristocracy didn't believe in giving the serfs and giving the farmers and giving the working people the vote, because they didn't think a democracy could work because the people were not educated or sophisticated enough not to just vote for no taxes and benefits and everything the way they wanted. It's also why populist candidates can be dangerous. I feel that the situation that we used to call the dumbing down of America is a very real thing. You, as I mentioned in the introduction, and so many people who follow this video program, this video podcast on the Talkers channel, so many of them know you because of your tremendous history and success in the business. And you are an education expert in addition to being a political commentator and a general commentator of what's going on in our society. Do you think that the dumbing down of America is a real thing?
Yes, Michael, it is definitely a real thing, and it should, and I think it's obvious, but what happens is people get worn down by saying it's a dumb thing and it's going to be a catastrophe, and no catastrophe has happened, and then suddenly everything is okay till it's not okay. I see it every single day. And I see people say, under the age of 30 at least, say things like, well, I don't know anything about that because I wasn't alive then. Occasionally, I will go back and take a look at what was required. Kansas is a state that everybody sees on the internet. Sixth graders, what they had to know versus today. Imagine even a high school student knowing this. When I was still teaching, I gave this quiz one year, then I did it for the next 8 or 10 years to people that were getting ready the last couple of days, ready to graduate. Things like, now this was in South Jersey. We were about 30, 40 miles from Atlantic City. What ocean touches Atlantic City? Of course, the Atlantic. I had Pacific constantly. Who's Leonardo da Vinci? A mob dude. You can't make stuff like this up. You watch Jesse Waters. You watch, he did it first on Fox. He has his guy Johnny do it now. They go out to Times Square or somewhere else, and they just find people that are unbelievably lacking in knowledge. Are they people that are aberrant, or are significant numbers of people like that? And I would answer, significant numbers are. So how do they get by every day? Maybe they have a work skill. Maybe they have a particular skill. But to your point, when it comes to making decisions about voting or anything major that involves a little bit of knowledge, if you have no knowledge base, you can't make an intelligent decision. You can't remember what happened yesterday and connect it to today. So what a lot of candidates do is this, many, many of them. They do wild stuff to make their name. They do wild stuff maybe a bit in the primary to get a base to come out. And then they have to be skillful in the general election to make all of us forget about that. I'll give you a case in point. I remember quite a background going with the state representative who had voted to say motorcycle riders should not have to wear a helmet. And when he ran for election, I brought that up because people forgot how dangerous it was, et cetera. Well, without talk radio, without this type of stuff, the average person doesn't connect any of this. And all they're hearing is what they're hearing today. And we vote on just popularity or something else. So this is a real thing. All these test scores indicate it. All the anecdotal evidence, anybody watching this right now has to know that. And then COVID comes along. And with COVID, we had kids learning remotely. They weren't learning. And that's where a lot of parents got into an uproar. And we saw the pushback on this. And the schools, with all those billions, I don't know if it was $1 trillion spent, may have been close to it. They did not take the money and do the one thing that has to be done: intense one-on-one or at least group tutoring. And those kids that went through that period of time, particularly at critical junctures, they are massively behind. And what it's going to do to us and them economically, socially, is devastating. We're starting to see more and more of it. So you're not crazy. And some of the things I know that you've done in entertaining ways to make this point are exactly real. And anybody that wants to push back on that, I'm ready at all times to take on the NEA, the NJEA, or any of these people. People see this. We're told, don't worry about it. America is great. We will always be great.
Just by being Americans, just by being America.
Yes.
Talk about riding on your laurels. Most of my work is devoted to following the media and its impact on society and on people. Do you think that the media is partially responsible, or maybe in a major way, your view of the media's responsibility for this syndrome that we have both decided is a thing? The dumbing of America?
Yeah, yes. And I will start with the local media, local TV media. We always hear them say, we only have 22 minutes, half-hour show, commercials and all that. Okay, but what are they filling those 22 minutes with it? Weather, a little bit of sports, but weather, a fire that you see, etc. In other words, it used to be that the local media would take a key story of the day in your area, maybe even nationally if it was key enough, a little bit of team coverage, connect the dots on that, because a lot of people still get their news that way. I don't think the major newspapers, which are fading, do that. The nightly news is very much different than it used to be. So we're left with that, and we're left with social media. And social media really exacerbates this because it is so cruel, so shallow, so much just owning someone. So the media people tell me, well, Michael, if we really do something intensely, people don't want to watch that. So you're darn right, we're going to put on snow, let it snow, let it snow. And we're going to do fluff piece after fluff piece. And then we're going to complain we don't have enough time. So I would argue that where are people to go other than people that really are searching for this or going to really good schools or have parents who are readers and teach them and bring them up? We are really seeing the numbers edge up of those who are essentially illiterate. They are functionally illiterate or something close to it. They can read, but they don't read. And also they don't connect concepts, nuances, etc. One of my heroes is a guy named E.D. Hirsch. He wrote a book that was quite controversial. And again, it gets to your question, not just about the media. 3,000 words and phrases that every American should know, like any port in a storm. If you're reading something and you have no idea what something simple like any port in the storm means, or 1861 to 1865 or 1860 to 65, Civil War. If you don't have those things, and the schools resist it, they say that's pure memorization. They want to go along, passing people along, I believe, fraudulently, lowering standards, inching away. I mean, when I was teaching, I had someone tell me, Well, you must be wrong with the grade you gave me. I had a 78. That's a B. Not in my world. 78 is not a B. And I asked anybody watching this, what would you say in that situation? So there are a lot of factors here that are complicit. It is massive. It is, I don't even think it's subtle anymore. It's the type of thing we all have an experience with. And we are spending K to 12 education, the latest figure that's out in America in 2026, $1 trillion. If we're spending $1 trillion, don't you think the outcomes would be a whole lot better? I secretly believe a lot of people think, hey, this is America. It doesn't matter in the end. We're 40th in the world. You hear that? How many years have we heard that? We're 32nd in this in the world. How could that be possible when we're spending $1 trillion? And people look around and say, it looks like the same America to me. It's not. It is not as smart. It is not as knowledgeable. And somehow or another, I believe that will catch up with us. I don't know if it's 5 years, 10 years, whatever, but it is catching up with us.
And the chickens are coming home to roost. There's an idiom. The chickens are coming home to roost. What does that mean? We're talking, of course, about education, and you think about young people with education, but older people can be ignorant as well. And back to the media's contribution to that ignorance among people of all ages, I find, and I'd like your take on this. We could do it for hours, this subject called, targeting audiences, finding vacuums out there. A lot of conservatives, a lot of liberals, people who already have an axe to grind, where they already have a bias, they already are fans of a certain ideology. And then the media plays to that, as opposed to runs the risk of, irritating the audience or having the audience not be happy. Give them their shot of dopamine, tell them what they want to hear. Does tell them what they want to hear ism, in your opinion, also lend itself to the dumbing down of America?
Yes. And again, all big three of the cable networks certainly do this. And I get it. They have a core audience they're appealing to. That's why one of the shows that I like the most is on CNN, their 10 o'clock Monday through Friday show with Abby Phillip. Because even though there's a lot of shouting, a lot of elbowing, pushing back and forth, it's one of the few shows on TV where you actually have people that have differences, and many of them are highly educated, highly refined, and they go after each other. It's entertaining too. So we met that requirement to get a mass audience, and they're actually educating each other. Fox doesn't do that. Fox has the five, and they have one token liberal in there that they beat up on, that it's impossible to fight back on these issues. So this can be done in an entertaining manner, but you need to have people that can really contest on the issues. So I think shows like Crossfire, now look, these things are not academically oriented, but I'm talking in the popular world, they at least are pretty elevated on the topics they talk about and the pushback. And how did we get from the point, I was on a young, but I remember seeing newsreels of people like Fulton Sheen, Bishop Sheen, religiously, or public intellectuals, William Buckley, people like that. And these people had high ratings. Where did all those things go? The hope out there is there's still a lot of people that are buying and reading books, not necessarily, though, books that are balanced one side or the other, their own political ideology. But at least there's still in America a class that are doing that. The problem is I would say it this way, Michael, in America, the smart people are still very smart. They're going to get ahead, but their numbers are decreasing. And then the people that were moderately smart, a vast number in America, they are decreasing, and we're moving down to the lower rung of people that were just barely functional. Those are increasing. In other words, we're hollowing out the middle of people. You need that to have a nation that is truly smart, maybe not the most intelligent, but intelligent. That number is going down. We observe it all the time. And the reasons why, you can talk the media, we certainly can talk schools, we can talk parenting, and it's incremental. It's not something that happens snapping your fingers. It's inch by inch, day by day. And COVID, though, was the one game changer. These things were incremental. COVID put them on steroids.
You go back a long way in radio. You've been on the air in Philadelphia for decades and decades and decades, but you got there in an interesting way. You were a go-to guy. You were a teacher. What was your background as an educator, and how did you wind up in radio?
I got discovered by talk radio. I can remember the day that I discovered talk radio. I was mesmerized by it. And I was teaching kids who were a number of them were pretty intelligent on paper, but they were just going to skate through school. They did not read. They refused to read. I helped to coin the word alliteracy, not illiteracy, when you can read, but you choose not to. Literally, none of them had read a full book. So I got thousands of books, many of them of interest to them. They had to read. They were not going to pass if they didn't. They weren't going to succeed. They had to write about it. And I changed the grade scale where it became very difficult to get a D. You were either going to be in an A or B, or you were going to fail. And it took a lot to do this. And I got discovered because I did unusual things for kids who really succeeded, like get them a half-price transmission job. Another guy we got 20 pounds of shrimp for. I had people in the neighborhood, that kind of thing, that were willing to do that. In other words, incentives. And I just believe if you're a reader, if you really are a reader, any kid that's a reader, if you can get your child doing that, that is a long way toward them being a learner, a smart person. Let's cut with the learner stuff and just say, do you want a kid who's dumb or a kid who's smart? And some of these kids are functionally dumb. They don't have to be. There's nothing wrong with their brain. But to me, they are dumb. And what they're going to go through life doing is, if they don't have a particular skill, like playing a sport, being really attractive, being someone who works excessively well with their hands, they are just not going to have a life of fulfillment financially. And unless they have some knowledge base and some desire to do that, I would argue they're just not going to be fulfilled as a person. They may make some money. They may be able to do that. And as a nation, we just don't have enough people that are functional in that manner. And I mentioned E.D. Hirsch a moment ago, the guy with the 3,000 words, and he poured in a storm, chickens coming home to roost. He also wrote these books, What Every Child Should Know by the End of First Grade. And this takes me to the school systems. I taught in a school system where you could have a 0, essentially, for the year, get an A in the fourth marking period, and pass for the year. They rigged a system toward that. And people see the grade changes, like someone saying to you, what's the C grade today? Some places, Michael, they don't even have 70 as a passing grade. God knows what it might be. Or they'll give you your paper back and you get 3, 4, or 5 tries. So they say, well, you tried and you got a passing grade. It's an endless procession of that, and kids pick up on it. And that's why the schools, by and large, the public schools, are fraudulent, and why they fight school choice so much. I played on my radio show today, day we're taping it, Mississippi will become the 18th state that looks like they're going to go for statewide school choice. A Democrat representative stood up and said, the reason we can't do this, I'm paraphrasing, I'll try to get it right, is what if Johnny's mom or Johnny's dad, a mom, is a crystal meth addict, and what if the dad is a pimp? How's Johnny going to go to a private school? Who will protect his rights? The public schools are the ones that have guidance counselors and protections. Imagine a guy standing up in a debate on something this important and saying the mom is a meth addict and the dad's a pimp. We can't trust parents. And he goes, what about undereducated parents or grandmoms? We have forces out there that are aiding and abetting the dumbing down of America. Sadly, many of them are one party, Democrat Party, and they're doing it by refusing to allow parents who do care and their kids to get a choice, to get a better education. Because in many public schools across America, you have right now tonight, you have some school districts, Baltimore is one that comes to mind, Philadelphia, You have 20, 30 schools in those districts where not one single kid is reading at a proficiency level or doing math. How in the world can you do that 5 or 6 years in a row and that school still be open? Well, you can do it if you stand up and make a moron out of yourself by saying, what if the dad is a pimp and the mom is a meth addict?
Clearly, you've established that parenting is an important part of this equation. How about your background as a parent? Did you have good experiences as a parent in terms of the education of your children?
Yes, and both are different. They're both boys. And the first one has more of my background, I guess, budding talk show host, among other things. He was homeschooled for a bit, and then we found a school that caters to homeschoolers, but at the same time also provides a curriculum. The other son is very mathematically inclined, with scholarship all the way. He went to a Catholic school, and then he had straight A's in both the English classes, math classes, engineer, all that stuff at the college level. So we were happy with the choices we made, and it comes back to, again, my wife and I, she is an educator also, pre-K for years. We both had the means, the energy. She was staying at home for a while, and we had the academic background to make these choices. I can't imagine what it's, and even then, Michael, you know, there were hurdles like everybody else. It wasn't always perfect. They had difficulties at times, minor. But what do parents do that don't have those advantages, if you will, that we did, as far as finding the system that works for their kid? And there's nothing more important than doing that. So yeah, I'm very happy with the outcomes for both of them, who are very different personalities and got into very different schoolings that worked for them. But we had a hand in not forcing them to do it, but sensing this and all the options and all the parental groups. And my wife, Ro, was a member of these moms groups, et cetera. And from a very early age, gymboree, things of that nature, constant stimulation, reading to them, developing a love of reading. Well, these other parents don't. And if they end up in some of these fraudulent public schools, what's the outcome going to be? Well, then the mission becomes get them through. Let's figure out a way to get as many through as we can, even though at graduation, they might tell you Leonardo da Vinci is a mob dude. That's how it happens. And again, the big thing in America right now, the civil right, should be school choice. It's an obvious thing. 18 now have full-fledged school choice. And soon with the big, beautiful bill, every one of these governors will be called upon. The one I'd like to salute, Michael, because I don't want to be, just on one side of the aisle, is Governor Polis of Colorado. He's more liberal than I, but he's a reasonable guy. He's the only Democrat that recently signed off and said he will take the money from the big, beautiful bill, which is essentially, in quotes, free money, meaning it's not going to take away from the public schools, and he will use it to go into nonprofits there. You'll be able to apply and get school choice. And that guy is a very liberal guy on most issues. How in the world is it? And he said, if I didn't do that, I would be failing the very people that I swore and took an oath of office to. Now, I'm not sure if he's running for president or not, but he's a guy to consider. John Fetterman in Pennsylvania, who's a Democrat, is another guy to consider, because they get it. This is not a partisan issue. The teacher unions, though, are already coming after him big time, targeting him constantly. How dare he say that he's going to let parents make a choice? He's a big funder of the public schools. He wants to fund the public schools, but he wants to give people an option. So again, even though we differ on many issues, I salute that guy. I'm trying to get him on the air just to say, thank God for a guy like this on the other side that gets this.
So you consider school choice a political issue, and those that don't support it are on the other side. So it is a politicized issue within the education discussion.
Yeah, sadly, it does come down to that most Republicans, I don't know too many that don't support it. And Democrats, well, whenever they have a chance, like here in Pennsylvania, they do support it, but often they're not given a chance to vote on it. But why would Polis, smart guy, very liberal,
All
why
right.
would he go for it? And
I,
why are these others all hesitating?
I,
The
I,
money's
I,
out there. It's enormous.
I understand. I understand what you're saying. Let's move forward. For those that don't know, quick, easy definition of what does school choice mean? Because I would be willing to
Yeah.
say most people don't know what that means.
Yes. School choice means we ought to be looking. I'll start at the very basic. I guess the most where the government is not involved would be homeschooling. The parents should have a choice within certain boundaries to homeschool their kids. The objection is always, how would parents know what to do? There are all sorts of ways. And by the way, Michael, this is something good. Many people who self-identify as liberal are now homeschoolers too. The next rung up would be charter schools. And charter schools, to me, are thrilling the people that are running charter schools now, meaning they're a public school, but they are independent of the central office in various ways. And they often have some kind of hook of something they explicitly do that attracts parents. The beauty of charter schools is if they're not providing what parents want, guess what? They go out of business. That's exactly what's needed. And then the next rung would be choice, where it's a voucher system of some sort or another, and people get the money to make a choice about going to a school they want to go to. Many times it's not enough to cover it, but it helps them to get over the top with that and meet it. And that's all that it means, that many people will still choose public schools. But what happens is when you have those other things going on, the public schools have to be better, or fewer and fewer people are going to choose them. It's a pretty simple concept. And 18 states have already now moved to be the entire state. I would predict by the end of this year, it'll be 25, or it'll be the majority in America are for school choice.
What role are the unions playing in all of this?
Well, the teachers' unions, and I was a member, you had to be when I taught in Jersey. I would tell you this, the problem with the teachers' unions is you have a lot of teachers who are not politicizing anything. They're not about that. They just want to teach. And then you have, Michael, goodly enough of these frustrated labor activists who take over. And these people are like, they think they're frustrated Jimmy Hoffa's. I had a guy once, occasionally as a teacher, you have to talk to the principal with some dispute. He told me, Don, watch what I do. It's called posturing. We just learned it in union practice. We're sitting there in front of the principal. He opens up the top of his candy dish and starts taking stuff out of it. Michael, I wanted to go right over the top rope and say, this guy doesn't represent, let me out of here. Make him put that candy back. The teachers' unions, we saw what they did during COVID and what they continue to do. The teachers' union in Minnesota recently has said students ought to be able to be on remote learning, and people went along with it to February 12th because of the ICE activity there. This is ludicrous. You're not going to learn remotely. It doesn't work. We saw what happened. Why did they do it? It showed their power. Randy Weingarten, who is brilliant and a great talk radio guest, but a force for negatives here, was the one who pushed back even on the CDC when they were going to open schools again. Then we have the NEA. And if anybody has ever seen their leader go off in a crazy manner, Becky Pringle, they have about 3,500 members. They are a big problem. And what they do in local school districts is they cow the school board. They're associated with the school board. There's threats of strikes and everything else. Who speaks for the parents in that situation? And the answer is very few people. Politicians, and where I am in Pennsylvania, whatever, they want that endorsement. The teachers' unions are the foot soldiers for them, and they provide an extraordinary amount of money. So a lot of people that see this, and every day I encounter, they like their kid's teacher. That's not where the problem is. It's the fact that you have these labor activist types that constantly are pushing this agenda. And the agenda, the best way I can put it, is the executive director of the NEA one year when he was retiring, stood up at their convention. I play it 2 or 3 times a year. And he said, we are not significant because we're teaching kids, we're advancing learning. We are significant because of one thing, power. We have power, and got a standing ovation. We've seen recently both the NEA and NJEA both center in on what for 25, 26? Fascism. Now, it's a fine thing to be talking about fascism in some kind of level, but I would think reading and writing and things associated with that, that would be the core of what they would be doing and trying to refine and do some of the things we're talking about today. Instead, Randy Weingarten's book is about fascism. The NEA says it's a lifetime pursuit of fascism because we're living under fascism now. That's their agenda for 25, 26. If you can't keep your eye on the ball, how are you ever going to hit the ball? And the ball is reading, writing, an educated, a smart America, not a dumb America running around talking about fascism.
Reading, Writing, and Reason is the name of one of your podcasts. Your big national podcast is Old School, New School, Next School. So you're taking in a large, attractive territory there. And any conversation about the dumbing down of America would be incomplete if we don't at least mention. And again, let's keep this on the brief side, because each one of these are rabbit holes that we could spend an hour in. But we didn't have this issue when we were kids, not on the level we have it today. And that is, of course, school violence and safety. What impact does that have on the educational process of Americans when schools have big fences around them, metal detectors, guards at the door? We never had anything like that. It wasn't even, we never even thought of it as being a situation. Our culture's changed so much. What's the impact of this?
It is tremendous. And one of the remedies, Michael, comes back to school choice. You have kids living in the inner city or near the inner city whose parents are afraid to send them to school because of the bullying and threats of violence. So there are cyber charter schools, which is an exciting new concept. And one of the major things is you have them at home, you know what they're doing, you can help out, and they're safer. And yet where I am in Pennsylvania, cyber charter schools, which are educating 75 to 100,000 students a year, are under fire by whom? Governor Josh Shapiro, the teachers unions, and others, constantly complaining and attacking them at every level. The next level of bullying or the problem in schools would be social media and the types of things that you and I didn't have to experience, and a lot of people watching didn't have to experience, as far as even females, many times that, using social media to go after a particular child. We've seen suicides. We've seen all of that. Inside the school itself, I taught in schools, and I'm about 6'1", 210, 215 when in shape. You have kids that, I had a kid tell me he had a constitutional right to fail. He wasn't going to do anything. So many teachers are barely able to get by each day because of the potential threat of violence. It wears you down. I feel for these teachers. It's a physical thing. I never went home that I wasn't tired when I was teaching. It's a physically and mentally exhausting thing. So violence, the threat of violence at any time, cafeterias, stuff like that, the cyber part of this, the social media part of it, it is all encompassing. So what do people do? Why does that diminish? Well, you're hanging on. You don't have the time or energy to be exploring creative things to reach kids gifted and talented. What you're doing is you're hoping that nothing bad is going to happen today in many instances. Something that could be physical. It could be a challenge with a group of kids. When you have to do that constantly, it wears on you. And that's one of the reasons why any number of people drop out after that first or second year of teaching. It's a national problem.
The social media and the digital era lend towards short-term attention spans. And are short-term attention spans a problem?
Yes. And one of the things that is a direct consequence of this are phones. We are seeing more and more school districts and states across the country. Now, it's not a panacea. I never had to deal with that toward the tail end of teaching, at least at the high school level. If you have someone looking at their phone all day long, the studies that have come out just in the last couple of years have been groundbreaking. It is a distraction beyond belief. It is almost an addiction. And it is in a classroom very, very difficult. So I would say even the last year of teaching, Michael, that's one of the number one things I found anecdotally. A lot of people say the same thing. Attention spans are just not there. So how do we get out of that? Well, there are phone bans in schools and states. And I wouldn't say it's a panacea, but there have been glimmers of hope in some of the studies that have been done as far as fewer incidents of violence, discipline, more books checked out, those kinds of things. This is a road to go down. Phones are great, technology is great, but a problem that's happening in schools, for example, let's say it's a class, pretty smart class reading Shakespeare. They're not reading it anymore. They're just watching it through technology, something of that nature. And putting computers in schools way back when, particularly elementary, we thought, wow, we're going to have really smart kids. Not so. It's the basics, and it's a basic ideation and reading skills that we need rather than just technology. Technology is an add-on, and I am very fearful of AI and where AI is going to take it. And in a political sense, what I do in the day job, I think the party that latches onto this, some of the difficulties with AI is a panacea. You're going to see more and more of this. It has to be controlled. It has to be focused.
I'm very concerned about the mental health of Generation Z, of people born in this century who are now coming of age and facing getting a job. But what about the mental health of our young adults today? How serious?
Well, I would say the bright side, Michael, are the kinds of things we just talked about a moment ago. This Dr. Haidt, H-A-I-D-T, I believe it is, groundbreaking on talking about the phones again, the preoccupations with the phone and mental health and social media that's attached to it. Again, it's not that it's the most evil thing imaginable, but it's the overconsumption. It's the type of thing connected with your brain, and the studies that are indicating how limiting this is, how addictive it is. Less is more on this. And this plays right in to the difficulties with mental health. What I'm trying to push back on many times when I'm asked on education fronts, I'll give you just a simple thing. Because these problems have taken a while to develop, and they're big, and they're going to take something still, we're relying on panaceas. For example, the latest rage is to say, well, kids are not learning as well because they're going to school too early. And in Pennsylvania, where I am, and across the country, they're coming up with teenagers shouldn't start school to 8:45, 9 o'clock. This is crazy talk. Their parents have to get back in the mode, and we have to develop kids to go back. I was a teenager. You were a teenager. You know, suddenly the biology didn't change that much. We're looking at those panaceas, and they come and go for every 2 or 3 years. And then we keep on seeing mental health go down and difficulties associated with it. So I would say, if I had to point to one thing, over-reliance on phones and social media, curtailing that for normal kids that really don't have necessarily this overwhelming problem. It's resulting in a lot of kids who feel depressed. I'm not saying deeply depressed. If it's that, then you need counseling, you need help. I'm talking about every day. It seems to be more of this sort of thing goes on about labeling depression. And some of the things we've talked about today, I think, are at the root of it that are solvable, that can be done by parents and educators to push back on this. And there are signs they are pushing back on it to some degree.
And there you have it, an uninterrupted conversation with Philadelphia-based radio talk show host Dom Giordano. Dom is heard daily noon to 3 p.m. on WPHT 1210 a.m., and he's the host of a rapidly growing podcast titled Old School, New School, Next School with Dom Giordano. It's must listening for parents who care about their kids' education and the future of America. You can hear the weekly program wherever you get your podcasts. Up Close, Far Out with Michael Harrison is a production of the YouTube Talkers Media channel. Please support the program with a like and subscribe to the channel. Our producer is Matthew B. Harrison. Thank you for tuning in. Copyright 2026, Talkers, all rights reserved.